When I walked onto that stage in Rosebank, the harsh white of the spotlights erased the world. I could barely see the faces out there, just a rolling wave of anticipation, impatience, a few predatory grins. My slicked palms cradled the wireless mic, thumb grazing the worn logo like it could ground me. This was it, the pitch, the shot I hadn't dared to speak of to anyone outside my youngest sister. I'd practiced midnight in my childhood bedroom, feet thudding against the uneven tile, voice echoing off peeling turquoise walls. I'd stood in front of my shattered mirror, reciting, "My name is Anele Radebe, and I'm here to bring movement to communities who have only known stillness." Words sounded stronger alone. Now, with investors' watches winking ruthlessly, my tongue shrank. I tried to introduce my project, J-Dance, a youth studio and outreach bringing contemporary movement to township kids, but my sentences tripped over themselves, scattered like shoes in a dusty doorway. I could feel the crowd registering my accent, the imposter in my English, the gauntness of my frame. A woman in the front row frowned, pen poised. "So," she said when the momentum was gone, "your business is dancing." "More than that," I said, scrambling for lost conviction. "It's choreography and—" A ripple of laughter cut me short. A man with a diamond earring snorted audibly, "So you want money for a hobby, boy?" My heart pounded. I thought of my mother's warning that morning, how she dug into her maize porridge, eyes trained on nothing. An expensive bus ticket wasted. Rather work the mine, Anele, be a man. I'd told her nothing of this, but her disapproval haunted me now as the investors shifted, bored, skeptical, a little cruel. Someone in the back coughed, Lindy's favorite teacher when we were children. He had once told me my future would be small but necessary, like a bolt in the city's machinery. Dancing, I guess, did not fit that vision. The final insult came after my desperate last-minute demonstration. I kicked off my battered shoes and danced as if my skin alone could explain the dream. I swept my arms, leapt, spun story and hunger into the cold air, tried to recall the rumba my aunt had taught me in a passage too small for hope. Silence, then no more questions. "Thank you, Anele, we'll be in touch." I left the stage with my face rigid, fighting not to run. As the curtain stilled behind me, I wanted to collapse. The evening's failure throbbed in my body like a bruise. I rode the rear via home. The city at night filtered through dust and windows streaked with fingerprints. As the bus hissed to a stop in Dobsonville, tired workers hoisted plastic bags and avoided my gaze. My studio dreams mocked me from every passing alley. At home, Mama met me at the door, eyes braced for disappointment. "You're back early." I didn't answer. In the back room, my sisters whispered, and Lindy peeked through the curtain, her face a hybrid of pity and curiosity. The television blared a soap I felt like a sore thumb in a hail of normal life. "Nobody wants a dancing man, Anele," Mama sighed. "You'll see, get a job next month, nay." It was only after midnight, when everyone slept, that I let myself cry. For weeks, shame clung to me. Each day I'd slip out before dawn and practice behind the abandoned car lot, red dust baking my feet. I studied videos of Alvin Ailey and Gregory Makoma on my cracked phone, tracing their movements, daring myself to mimic more than muscle. But everywhere, the echo of laughter from that stage replayed. At work in the bakery, flour strung my ragged knuckles. The baker, Mangina, joked, "You want to be a star, Anele, maybe when I'm president." But at least he said it kindly. What strung more deeply was my family. Mama acted as if I'd shamed her lineage. She invited the neighbors, the sizer women who traded gossip like garden beans, and told them, "He's just tired, needs to find a proper path." During braais, uncles nudged me and said, "Show us your million-rand dance." And everyone laughed while I stared at the coals, feeling like their punchline. No one bothered to ask what it meant to move, what it cost, but there was Lindy. On school afternoons, she snuck onto the lot, little shoes scuffing next to mine. "Show me how to spin," she'd whisper, cheeks brilliant with embarrassment but always eager. So I taught her. I held her tiny hand as she wobbled through step ball change, spinning until we collapsed, laughing into the brittle grass. "One day I'll dance on stage with you," she promised. I smiled, though inside my courage flickered. "Maybe we'll both fly," I told her. Despite the derision, I tried again, went to every open call, every workshop, every tiny studio gig. I choreographed for primary school concerts, coached crews for cash at parties. I barely made enough for bread, but sometimes in the aftertaste of sweat and applause, however reluctant, it felt like more than survival. I learned from failure. Each time I floundered, too foreign, they said, too experimental, too township. I honed my movement, sharpened my pitches, shed what wasn't true. I saved slices of each small payment, investing in a dilapidated set of mirrors and mats. Months passed, Lindy grew taller, my hope thinned to a reed. The big break arrived sneaky, disguised as a bad omen, an ankle sprain at my factory job. With time off but rent looming, I focused entirely on training others. I went school to school, offering coded workshops in exchange for little more than tea and bread. Word spread about the crazy man who tried to teach busking kids ballet. Then, a teacher at Chiawilo Intermediate called with a real offer, choreograph their year-end showcase, a blend of traditional and modern styles. We couldn't afford the famous ones, but we remember your passion. I clung to that word, all I'd left. For 3 feverish months, I worked with children who had only known their shadows. I brought them music, insisted they could leap as high as stories allowed. Uncles lurked by school gates, arms folded, MXM, waste of time. But those kids learned to hold their heads high, to own a part of the sky. The showcase drew a crowd, parents, teachers, a few city dignitaries. When my smallest dancer, Tumi, spun into a perfect pirouette, the applause poured over me like summer rain. People forgot to laugh. The school paid me in gratitude, but my vision glimmered for a beat, the first crack in the wall. Over the next years, I built J-Dance in pieces. I gathered cast-off costumes from richer schools, coaxed soccer boys and church girls to rehearsals. I taught in parks, under viaducts, wherever a patch of space allowed. Dance, I realized, was as much about stubbornness as grace. I developed choreographies drawn from G-Com, from the supple resilience of township life, blending the township strut with lyrical movement that carried longing and hope. J-Dance became a name whispered at schools, then shouted on local radio. Sponsors came small at first, a bakery owner, an auntie who ran a spaza shop, then eventually, a youth arts program at WITS. I poured every cent back, painting walls, buying shoes, raising a shelter for rainy days. For every step forward, a neighbor's snicker reminded me where I'd started, but by then, I no longer flinched. Doubt became the fuel to leap higher. Every time we performed at a festival or made it to a provincial competition, I sent photos home. Mama didn't mention them. At family gatherings, I was still the one who couldn't wear a tie. You know Anele, nay, the cousins joked. He dances now like on TV but for free, but Lindy defended me. He teaches kids who had nothing. Would you rather they run with gangs? Sometimes her face burned more fiercely with pride than mine could ever manage. News of our playoff burst last December. J-Dance had been invited to the internationals in Berlin, community troops from the world's hardest places, shown on a streaming platform everyone suddenly watched. But the trip would cost what I didn't have, and I doubted anyone here would believe it was real. Then a month ago I got the letter. A foundation impressed by my documentary would cover the travel, the stay, the food for 10 of my dancers. I reread the email over and over, seeing my name under their sharp foreign logo. My hands shook. I called Mama. The phone rang, her voice fractious with doubt. Germany. What business do you have in Germany, Anele? She didn't laugh, but I heard the disbelief. Don't let them use you for a laugh, my boy. That night, after a restless sleep, I messaged the family WhatsApp group with the news, attaching the official letterhead and a screenshot of the festival's homepage. For once, nobody made a joke. We'd practiced the Berlin set for weeks in the new space, a crumbling warehouse in Maboneng with high windows and leaks that let in just enough light to feel hopeful. Jay, my oldest dancer, stomped out frustration. His father thought dance was a waste too, but by now hope was contagious. We worked with nothing until the bones of the routine slid together. Silent struggle, gospel hands, a surge of footwork that made even the dust shimmer. The night before we flew, I stood by my window. Johannesburg beyond was gold and concrete, a city that broke you, then handed you strange forms of loyalty. I thought of lost years, the shame, the nights I'd listened to the city's doubts. I thought of Mama, still unwilling to say, well done, son. I thought of Lindy, now 17, who would dance with us in Berlin. We flew out on a Wednesday, my troop wild with nerves, pressing close in the foreign customs line. When we landed, the air bit colder, but the city felt alive in its own feral way. We danced that weekend for a packed theatre. There were rows of faces, some pale and solemn, others shining with curiosity. My dancers stepped onto that foreign stage, trembling but proud in borrowed costumes. We moved as if the weight of every township child was inside us. The crowd did not laugh. At the climax, a verse in Sesotho blared and we leapt, and the crowd thundered. After the judges commended our storytelling, called our work urgent, necessary, raw with beauty. An arts journal published my photo with the tagline, Anele Radebe, Reimagining Africa in Movement. There was a trophy, applause, small interviews with big people. We returned with proof, medals, reviews, shaky smartphone clips gone viral through Township, Facebook, and YouTube. The community planned a homecoming. I arrived with my dancers, their eyes alight. We wore our festival shirts, our medals bright as brass. Lindy clutched her own, defiant under her braids. Mama had organized the food grudgingly. She wore her favorite dook. Neighbors packed the raid yard, faces crowding the wire gate. Old uncles sat in folding chairs. Kids hung wide-eyed from low branches. Even the sizer women came, arms crossed, purses tight against their sides. A city TV crew, sensing a good human interest angle, set up a camera. I handed the compere a USB stick with our Berlin dance. Everyone, please, the MC, Mangina from the bakery, who had seen my worst flops, tapped the mic. You mocked them once, now see what they did. The projector flickered to life against Mama's half-painted wall. The screen showed us, my battered squad, stepping onto the European stage, the strange crowd silent with respect. Jay's leap, Tumi's spin, Lindy's fearless hands flying against the cold as the crowd abroad exploded in applause. There was no laughter this time, only the small sounds of surprise. When the short film ended, people stared as if seeing something new in the same cracked yard. An old uncle who had led the jokes shook his head. Ah, Anele, I did not know it was all for this boy. The sizo women whispered. Mama approached slow, her face was a patchwork, pride patched over worry, eyes wet but her chin high. She put her arm around me, her first public embrace since I was a child. You gave them something, my boy. You did not disgrace us, nay. Someone in the crowd called out, Speech, Anele. I hesitated, throat dry, not from shame, but feeling a different kind of fear, that all this was possible, that it was finally real. I looked at my dancers, at Lindy, her grin wider than the city, and back at my neighbors, my family, all those who had doubted and who now watched for what came next. I spoke simply. All I wanted was to move. To show you we could be more than the laughter or the struggle. We owe the city our courage, not because I did this, but because you never stopped watching. I wanted to show you what could be done. Even when you laughed. A ripple of uneasy laughter broke, softer now, almost tender. Mama squeezed my shoulder. He's stubborn, but sometimes it works out. For a moment, I felt every wound close itself from the inside, slowly, never perfectly, but real. I thought of that night after the investor pitch when I wanted to disappear, to shrink down into my skin and never risk anything again. Instead, I had stayed. I had moved. After the cake was cut and hands dusted with sugar, people lined up to shake my hand, even the old teacher who'd called me necessary but small. He took my palm and wouldn't let go. You got big, Anele. You made us big too. Later, as the sun faded behind the Highveld haze, I stood with Lindy near the broken soccer posts. Distant music thumped, laughter spilled across the lot. See, she whispered, grinning. I told you one day we'd both fly. I held her hand, warm and real. There was courage there now, not shame, and it didn't come from proving anything to anyone but from finding movement that nobody could deny. At last, I looked up at the city that had mocked and made me. I whispered my thanks to the dust and the stars and began once again to dance.